The plan is simple. We are building the best possible modernized PlayStation for the lowest possible cost. We have a junk-listed console and a bunch of mods to install to make it even better than it was when it was brand new. At the end, we'll add up the costs and compare it to an expensive build to see if it's the same but for a fraction of the cost. So, let's tear it down and see what we're working with. The optical drive doesn't work on this unit, but that shouldn't matter as we are replacing it with a microSD card slot. That upgrade isn't the easiest. To start off with, we have the console itself, which was 500 yen. We specifically need this 5500 model, as it is the only one compatible with all of the mods we are installing today. After unplugging the power and controller cables, we can unscrew the top plate and see the motherboard. 5 more screws hold it in place. With those gone, we can carefully... Oh god. Oh. This bottom shell is very rusty, so we'll replace that too. This power supply is an NTSC unit. I can't use that here in Australia, so we'll switch to a region-free USB-C power supply instead. The last piece we need before starting the build is the controller ports. The teardown is complete. Now we move on to prep for the mods and upgrades. And these are much more difficult than a simple mod chip. For the HDMI mod, we have to remove the original serial port. But that's okay, we won't need it. But let's start with removing the shielding as it will get in the way of the other mods. The easiest way to pull this off is to heat up each connection and pull it away from the board. The center point can be a little tricky. Oh. Got it. To remove the serial port, we need to first apply low melt solder to lower the overall melting temperature of all the pins. Then we can turn on our heat gun and attempt to melt the connector off. This is really taking a lot of heat. I'll bump up the temperature and it's almost melting, but it won't quite almost. Alright. This isn't entirely necessary as we won't be using them, but I'm going to clean up the serial port pads. This step is entirely optional as the XStation ODE is region-free. Although, I want the BIOS menu to be in the PAL format instead of the Japanese, purely for nostalgia. I'm going to use low melt solder again here, but we need to make sure we remove it all from the pads afterwards. Now we can install our English BIOS chip that was taken from a broken board. I'm not entirely sure if it works, but I guess there's only one way to find out. This circle needs to line up with pin 1, and with that in place we can solder up all of the pins, clean it off, and replace the accompanying GPU clock crystal to ensure our video output displays correctly. The first mod is the XStation. This mod replaces the CD drive with a microcontroller and an SD card slot. Using this, we can load games from the microSD card instead of using discs. It emulates the original disk drive, so compatibility is extremely high. This clone XStation from Aliexpress was much cheaper than buying the real deal, although perhaps not quite ethical. We'll see if this one even works at all. We need to expose the copper on a couple of wires with a precision Dremel and tin them up. And we'll leave the most difficult part till last. A few of these connections are through holes, so we will use a fine tipped iron to ensure the solder melts all the way through. Then we can run around and solder in the remaining points. I would recommend to buy from an authorized retailer in this case, as the Aliexpress version doesn't have the same quality control and likely isn't compatible with future updates. And forget about a warranty. So again, the genuine product is the best option. Oops, forgot one. Next, we remove this resistor, which can be a bit finicky sometimes with an iron. This is so we can solder in our new clock wire to the XStation. I find thicker wire tends to be better for this. This is the trickiest part of the XStation install. We need to raise the pins as shown in this diagram. Use an extremely fine pair of tweezers. First we melt the point, then pull the pin out of the way. Careful not to break them, as it will make the troubleshooting coming up a lot more difficult. I've done this quite a few times by now, so I have little issue. But I would recommend taking your time with these and making sure none of them are touching each other. And after adding some tape to prevent the pins from touching the board, we switch to the HDMI up. This is definitely the hardest part of the whole build. There are dozens of pins along the graphics chip that need to be soldered to this flex board. And if the two wrong pins touch, then it's game over. Following the instructions, I add some Kapton tape to prevent any shorts before tinning up all of the pins. No! Wait a minute. Does that pad go anywhere? No, I think it's just a marking. Okay, we're fine. For now. Okay, now we line up the flex board and get it tacked down in place all the way along. And I did this wrong too. It's too high up, it needs to be removed. Thankfully, this kit actually comes with two flex boards. The PixelFX version only comes with one. So let's try this again. This kit from High Speed Edo claims to offer 1080p Full HD output, just like PixelFX's RetroGem Shiny Edition, which costs $190 whilst our cheap version is under $50. This is the one I'm most interested in, as the value proposition here is insane, and it's not even a clone of an existing product. Now we bend the flex so we can wire up the digital audio signal. I'm using some UV resin to hold it in place as we solder it in. The audio quality will also be interesting in the comparison later. The controller input needs to be wired up so we can control the OSD menu for the HDMI settings. This part isn't very difficult, but I've chosen different points than in the instructions, purely for ease. The HDMI mod board itself will be installed after we have our brand new shell unwrapped. That's all the soldering complete, but we still have a few mods left. This is a blue, brand new clear shell from BitFunX. This thing is insane. The fit is perfect and, well, it speaks for itself. It's like a clear version of Eminem's PS1, but it's also the most expensive part of the build at $100 US. Now, you may be wondering why it's in a supposed cheap build, but the goal is the cheapest ultimate build, so aesthetics are essential. And we can't really see the LEDs through an opaque shell now, can we? This is a USB-C PD compatible power supply. It's region free as it's a DC power supply, but I've soldered a USB-C decoy board in place of the original barrel jack. In total, the two parts came to less than $20 US, and I 3D printed the board cover. Hopefully it can power everything we're installing and not fry the board. I've added some accents to the controller ports too. The fit seems okay, but it seems like we need to bend this tab. Still not quite right, there's a little gap. I'll snip off this in case it's touching or shorting something out. The XStation connects via a wide ribbon cable from the quick solder board. Make sure this is all the way in, as a loose connection can result in a black screen. Continuing through the final assembly, we affixed the new HDMI port and connect its ribbon connector from the GPU. The XStation's ribbon cable gets threaded through the slit in the top plate. Then we can plug in the remaining cables and slot in the XStation and 3D printed tray. It did come with a molded one, but it doesn't quite match our color scheme here. Careful not to use too much force when bending this cable, as it could damage the wires inside. I will say this board looks incredibly similar to the genuine product, and it seems to fit just like it too, and that's the finishing touch. This thing looks incredible, almost like candy. Was it Steve Jobs who said that? The back of this machine looks better than the front of most. I'm blown away by how good this looks. Everything seems to fit fine. The SD card slot is a bit stiff, but let's get it booted to make sure everything is working. No way. Seriously. Is this what I get for not testing them individually? Why didn't it work? Is it shorting out? The XStation LED is on. Was one of them simply DOA? Was it my BIOS chip replacement? My soldering looked fine. The green LED on my HDMI splitter turns off when I turn the console on. What could that mean? I got up to begin the grueling troubleshooting process. After tearing it down, I removed the power supply and... Oh! What? That is boiling. Something's not right here. There's certainly a short, but from where? Okay, it's not the power supply. Probably. It seems to work when it's unplugged from the motherboard. So what could be shorting it out? Did I breach a couple of points? I checked all of my soldering though. Oh! Success. Okay. The plate is making... I think the culprit is right here. I can even see a bit of damage. So that lines up with this on the plate, I think. Yes. Yes, it does. And it's damaged the shell a little. So let's snap this off. And in hindsight, the image in the instructions shows it's been snapped off, but it never tells you to do so. And it fits flat now. We've done it, I think. Let's close up the build one more time and boot it, hopefully for the first time. A console from 1994 with USB-C and HDMI. But does it work? Yes, we are in. And the XStation loads. Another sort of mod we've got is the PSX Memcard Gen 2. This is an open source project that BitfunX have used to develop this memory card. It allows you to use a microSD card to save your games. Each gigabyte is thousands of memory cards, so it lasts forever. It also links up to the XStation and can see what game you're playing, so it can then load an individual memory card for each specific game, so you never even have to swap between them. For its price, this is probably the best value you get out of all the parts we've showcased here, because original memory cards are only getting more expensive, and they don't have a screen. Have we completed what we set out to do? Is this truly the cheapest ultimate build? This Aliexpress build is less than half the price of the expensive. Click the like button if you want to see a future video on the most expensive ultimate PS1 build. These LEDs are looking fantastic, and no complaints with the shell. The point to think about now would be, do the mods actually work? The XStation boots fine, and from the options menu we can see that it's on a December 2024 firmware, which is very recent, so we can expect compatibility to be just as high as a genuine version. But we'll have to do more testing. It loads up games, and the OSD menu for the HDMI upgrade shows up. It has only a few settings compared to the PixelFX version, but let's see how the actual video quality compares. Now you tell me which one you think looks and sounds better. A or B? Here is B, and here is A. I think it's relatively obvious which one is better, but considering the price difference, I would say the high-speed Edo is definitely better value for money. It's a lot of bang for your buck. There is slightly more detail in the PixelFX version and slightly better color accuracy, but other than that, they aren't too different. So in conclusion, I really do think this is the cheapest ultimate build for the PS1, and it shows that these parts are actually somewhat high quality, even if the instructions aren't quite sufficient. And here we actually have to go into the TV settings to set it to the right aspect ratio, as that's not available on the OSD. Subscribe if you want to make sure you don't miss my next ultimate build, and leave a comment on what you would add or change about this one. Goodbye.